So for those who don't know Linda, this book, this is like mandatory reading if you're in the youth sports world. Take back the game. It's first of all, it's so well written.
Oh, thank you.
So kudos. And there's a lot that I've been covering youth sports for a couple years now, and even rereading your book, there's so much that I learned that we're going to get into. And I want to frame this kind of like, because this book is like getting into all the ills of youth sports, but then also offering solutions, which is what we all need, right?
Yes.
For parents in particular. So I'm going to kind of like go down one by one and ask you how we realistically can um, fight back a little bit. But first, for those who don't know you, can you just give like a quick snippet of your background and how
Sure.
you got to writing this lovely
Sure. And I'm going to try to go in another room. Let's just see if
Okay.
there's my cute dog, by the way.
Wait, let me see.
Margot, where are you?
Wait.
Oh, there she
Oh,
is.
hi.
Anyway,
I
but
love. Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna go in another room just for privacy.
Yeah, my dog might start barking.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Maybe they
it's
can
okay if it's your dog. I don't want my dog to bark. Okay. So it's Linda Flanagan. I'm an author and I've been a coach I was a coach until 2019 for about 19 years of running, of cross country and some track, basically a running coach. And I'm also the mother of three, including one young, very good athlete in my youngest. And so I saw the youth sports environment from that perspective, and um, and I also saw it obviously from my wearing the coaching hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been very athletic my whole life, as has my husband as well. So we've kind of grown up with it and have appreciated what sports can do for. Certainly for my husband and I both have felt really um, enriched by our running, certainly, and we both also played other sports. So we came into coaching and all that with a very positive take on youth sports, and then I would say it evolved or devolved over time. Not that youth sports aren't don't have value, but that the kind of the way we are now providing them is corrosive in many ways. And so I'm also a freelance journalist. So I began kind of exploring some of these issues. And then one way or the other, it became a book. And then I explored them in greater depth.
Yeah, and now you do a lot of work in the field.
Yes. Yes.
Aspen, right?
Yes, I've done some freelance work for the Aspen Institute Sports and Society program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also currently working on a documentary project on collegiate women athletes and mental health. It was also very interesting. It's kind of a natural follow-on from the book and the parts of the book that were about college sports. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to get to one aspect. This isn't really getting into the ills of youth sports yet, but one of the things that I found most surprising, even rereading with the book, was the part where you talk about how a lot of us will kind of put up with all the crap, right? Because we're like, oh, at least our kids are getting, they're learning how to face adversity, they're gaining confidence, all
Right.
this sort of life lessons. But as you talk about in the book, which I never thought about, is actually kind of terrifying, and you back it up with all kinds of research, is the idea that it doesn't necessarily translate. If somebody can overcome adversity
Right.
facing a pitcher, it doesn't mean they're going to overcome adversity when they sit down for test at school. So, like, I guess if you want to talk a little bit more about that, but also, like, what can we as parents do to help bring those values in,
Bring those
bridge the
lessons.
gap?
Yeah. Well, it's the first time anyone's asked me that question, Melissa, and I've been asked a lot of questions. So props to you. And that insight about sports reveal character. That's one of those little sayings we like to think is true. And there's no evidence of that. And after conversations with Richard Weisbord, who's the head of Making Caring Common at Harvard, it's like there's no justification for that. There's no reason to believe that someone who has grit on the playing field, who's grace under pressure at the bat, say, doesn't necessarily going to be able to buckle down and study for the exam. Or we make these associations, like what's learned in sport transfers over to the rest of life, but we don't know that. There's no evidence of that. um it, it may, but there's no evidence of it. Likewise with building character. We like to think that sports build character, and I think there's one of the problems with that assertion is that we don't really define what character is. So is character, and there's different ways of defining it. And then there's one definition I like by Angela Duckworth, character of the heart, which is kindness and generosity, and empathy, sympathy. Character of the of mind, which would be open-mindedness and fair-mindedness, curiosity. And character of the will, which is discipline, resilience, um, courage. And I think we often think of sports in the latter camp, that type of character. But again, there's no evidence of that. In fact, there's a study of a meta-analysis of 40 years of research showing there's no correlation between playing sports and developing moral reasoning or sportsmanship. Um, so what can you do about it? Well, and first, before I keep going, are you getting a lot of static on the line or anything?
I'm not, but I
It's
did get a pop-up at one point that said your internet connection was shaky, but it's not there anymore.
okay. It seems fine now. Okay.
Yeah, if
So
anyone's here and wants to say if it sounds staticky or something.
yeah. Okay. It's fine by me. I just don't want to mess it up.
Okay.
Um, so I think one, and I as a coach, I finally got this internalized this message myself, which is if you want young people to learn something beyond, um, how to field a ball or how to serve, or run, then you have to be explicit about it. And I think, we can't just assume that what kids learn on the field is going to translate. So you have to make that connection for them. And I think one thing I did at the end of my season was to ask the girls, because I only coach girls, what did you learn? Like, I want you to take a piece of paper and sit down and we're going to talk about it. What did you learn that you can apply to the rest of your life? Um, what surprised you about yourself? And I won't go into what they said. I mean, it was really great to hear. And, I realized they were probably flattering me too, but at least made them think about, like, this is more than just about the game. It's more than about the race. It's what can you learn? What can you apply elsewhere? And like one of them said, I'm faster than I thought I was. I'm stronger than I thought I was. Those kinds of things. So I think if you want to make that connection with that sports can have beyond the mere game, then you have to be explicit about it, I think, as a coach. That's one thing.
Okay.
And of course, you have to walk the walk. You can't
Yeah.
just this obvious, but any coach who prattles on about punctuality and then shows up late all the time, well, that speaks a lot louder than the words.
Yeah. But as parents, I mean, we can obviously do the same thing. That's basically what you're saying, right? You could
Yes.
be asking these questions. It should
Yes.
be.
Yes. Right. I mean, I was answering those questions as a coach about how can you reinforce these ideas. And I think really as a parent, as it's true of so much, it's how you're modeling yourself, how you are behaving. And that's what they're going to see. If you make an issue of some perceived slight by the coach, or make an issue of the ref botching a call, then that's what's going to stick. If you can obviously approach issues on the team with fair mind. And I think, having been a coach, I always want parents to give the coach the benefit of the doubt, that assume that they're doing what they think is best.
Yeah.
They
God
might be
forbid.
making, yeah, oh, I know. And that doesn't mean we don't make mistakes,
Yeah.
but that we're doing our best and we have the best interest of the kids in mind. I think that there's a lot that can be done in that uh, way, in how parents and just how you're behaving. It's about how you're
Oh,
piling on the coach. Like, what are you teaching your kids? I think that's bad. And
right. So another part of the book and a point that you make that really, really struck a chord and is like one of those painful, kind of embarrassing realisms. So you went through it too. Like I've gone through it. Is the idea that parents and kids get their social status from basically the um, athleticism, if their kids
yes,
athlete. And I will just say before I know this is one of these questions. I feel like a lot of these, Linda, are like, well, how do you not get sucked in? You might, say just don't get sucked in, but the realism of that is different, or the reality.
yes,
And I just want to give an anecdote because it just my older son was guest playing for a baseball team a couple years ago, just getting back into baseball. And like the first game, whatever, he was fine. I don't know, like walked, maybe like got out a couple of times. Nobody spoke a word to me. And then the next game, like, he had a couple doubles and literally people were like, oh, hi, oh, that's your son. What's your name? Are you going to join our team? I was like, what the heck? Like that was so eye opening. Like that, I get that. I'm like, oh, that kid was really good on the soccer team. Like, oh, not you should go hang out with him, but like I should
yeah,
get to know those parents. Maybe we could do lessons. It just
yes,
it spirals
yes,
quickly.
yes. Well, and I think okay, my first caveat would be, I always want to point out that it's okay to feel proud of your child also. There's plenty of heartbreak in having kids and worry. So when they do something great on the field, like, I don't think that shouldn't be ashamed of feeling happy for them. At the same time, I just think being aware of, like, this makes me feel really good when people come up and pat me on the shoulder for how, my case, Paul did so well in the basketball game. Like, just be aware that it's it's not your game, to remind yourself that this isn't for me. And even if I feel good about it, like, okay, I'll just try to back off a little bit. And I think, one way to protect yourself from going too crazy is to not go to all the games. Um, which is like, oh my gosh. And I now have been told that parents, this was not the case when my kids were growing up, but certainly when I was, that parents went to practices. I'm like, well, it goes without saying that you don't go to the practice. I mean, that's when you really need to like regroup and think, what am I doing here? I mean, unless it's for driving purposes and you're in your car reading or something, but you know, it- it's this is youth sports are for the kids. They're not for the parents. And it's better if it's for the kids and it's not for the parents. Because once it becomes for us and your child sees how absolutely thrilled you are when they have a good game, that connection is solidified. And then it's, well, I really get a lot more love when I do well. And I don't think any of us really wants to convey that to our kids.
Hmm.
And I mean, I share the example in the book of where I was just so proud of my son for having such a good game. He's like 10 years old or something. And we'll have some chocolate milk. And it's really kind of lame. And I think we should recognize that these are kids' sports. They're not that important. Well, contrary to what everyone seems to think, they're not that important. And to just like be matter of fact about it when they do something good on the field, or when they do something well, like, good for you. Like, don't make a big deal of it. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Remind yourself that this is not that big a deal.
Yeah, I love what you say about practice, and that's because I'm just always shell shocked at the parents that watch practices and that are getting like visibly stressed out if their kid doesn't perform in practice.
Yes.
That's bonkers. But you also, you just talked about Paul. Is Paul his real name or
Yes. Yeah. He
okay.
gave permission. Yeah.
I guess people get, internet, I'm sure they could figure. out,
Yes.
but if people weren't. But so you talk about Paul though, and like he makes he does great in basketball. People want to have more play dates with him and all of that. Did you kind of let that happen, or did you kind of give the caveat to him?
I would say it was totally up to him. Like he was really good about making his own play dates. So if he wanted to, fine. It was usually teammates, and he made a ton of friends through sports, and that's one thing I think is great about sports for kids. That especially when they go to he wasn't in middle school at the time. By the time he got to middle school, he knew all these kids from all these different teams.
Totally.
So, I wouldn't have put the kibosh on it, but I was certainly aware that it's like, wow, you're so popular all of a sudden because you had a good game. But I think what's more troubling to me is when um, other parents, when there was sort of a adulation of a child athlete by other adults.
Right.
Like that's kind of, I think that should be guarded against. We don't want to make kids feel like they're special because they can hit a baseball hard. Or I mean, it's great that they can, but let's not like slobber over them like um, they're professional baseball players or something.
Right.
There's just something a little off about that, and I think it's something to
Yeah.
guard against when you're a sports parent.
Right, and it just devalues all the other things that you wanna be comfortable, like good manners and, polite and listening and all that stuff that
Yes,
isn't
right.
quite as sexy, but,
Yes.
um, yeah, so, okay, so the other thing that I in not the other many other things, but the college aspect of it. You write
Mhm.
a lot about the advantage that athletes
Mhm.
have in getting
Mhm.
into college. It's no secret, right?
Yep. Yep.
So then but then you're, as parents, and then of course this always spills down to the kids. I mean, how do you avoid getting into the loop too early on that because it's real?
Yes, and there is an advantage. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. There is an advantage to being an athlete in the college admissions process. I think it's most pronounced at the Division III level because um, that's where the higher percentage of the student body tend to be athletes. And one reason why colleges like them is because they tend to pay full tuition. Um, recruited athletes at Division III level tend to be wealthier and more suburban than the student body as a whole.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a real advantage. There's no question about it. I think, I think one thing it is helpful to bear in mind whenever you start thinking about maybe she'll become a college athlete or maybe he'll get recruited is just to ground yourself in the statistics, which is, 6 to 7% of high school athletes go on to play in college. And that's athletes, not high school students. But it's a small number that go on to play anyway. 2% get any kind of money, and about 0.2%, 0.3%, 0.2 or 0.3 get a so-called full ride, which I believe is about 1 in 500
Mhm.
high school athletes. So it's very unlikely, and you can always hope for it, and encourage your child. But what's funny about athletic ability is the kids who do the best are those who really want it themselves. They they have the intrinsic motivation to practice, to get out there and play, and they're constantly wanting to improve and they love it. That's not something the only thing you can do as a parent in that regard is to interfere with it. So if you give them space to develop, encourage them, keep some limits on it so that they don't overdo it. Because I think the really motivated kids are more apt to overdo it.
Yeah.
Then just get out of the way and let them develop their interests. But you can't decide. My child, my 8-year-old is going to be a college athlete. So it's kind of out of your hands to begin with. And the more you can just encourage their intrinsic motivation or you know stir their intrinsic motivation, um, then the better off they'll be. And it's funny, like it's kind of like trying to force someone to sleep. You can't force someone to sleep, but you can set up the conditions so that they're more apt to sleep. And so you want to give them opportunities to have agency over their lives so they can kind of decide how they want to pursue their athletics. It's not your decision, it's their decision. And obviously, it's dependent on age somewhat, but
Yeah.
let them steer it as much as possible. Give them an opportunity to get better. This is how intrinsic motivation is stirred. You give them like you can improve, you can get better, and they can when they can see that they can get better, they're more apt to that motivation is more apt to grow. And then finally, having a sense of belonging with other people. And again, this is why teams can be so good if they have agency and they have connection and they have a sense of competence.
Yeah. Um, I do find it difficult sometimes as a parent. I've heard this from other parents where the kid, 8, 9, 10 will say, I want to be a college XYZ. But then, and like if you know all of this, like it has to come from them. But then they're just like, well, after I play the, 7 hours of Roblox, maybe I'll.
Yeah.
I just find that so hard as a parent, really, though, to be like, well, if you sit here playing 7 hours of video games every day, like, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and you could say that, or you could even ask, like, well, what do you think it takes? What do you think it would take to be to be recruited, say, to this one school that your dream school, or like, well, we could look into that, or like, do you think that playing 7 hours of video games a day is going to get you there? But sort of like like confrontationally, but like probably not going to happen at this rate.
Yeah.
It's like if you want it to happen, you got to work for it, and maybe you don't want to work for it, which case you don't like it that much anyway. So it's not going to happen anyway.
This is so therapeutic, by the way. I feel like we're already leaving with like all these, like reframing how to talk to our kids. So
Yeah.
this is awesome. Okay, so here's a hard one. Specialization piece.
Okay.
They're getting like how do we help our kids push back on specialization? It's just worse and worse.
I know. Well, and of course, the challenge there is that you may think and know that it's crazy, and your child even doesn't even want to do it, but somehow the club or the team insists that you play soccer 2 seasons. Oh, and also over the winter come in. Um,
Yeah, I
I
think soccer's the worst actually. I don't know.
yeah.
Are there other sports that you know of that are year round?
Well, I mean, look at baseball. Baseball, fall ball now is customary. There's summer baseball. I mean, baseball is, we used to think spring was baseball season, but now there's fall ball and there's summer baseball. And I imagine there's a lot of plenty of winter stuff as well. And again, that's,
No.
yeah, indoor. But I think there's the pressure. It gets younger and younger for kids to be doing this stuff, in third or fourth grade to be playing year round, which is nuts. And I think I would encourage you to, or anyone to like try to engage in a little collective action, like together talk to the coach or the league head, or first of all, be careful where you're going. If you can find a league that's not demanding that, or is okay with you skipping the season. That's the other thing. You can say, look, this is the best team program, and might say your child's really good, and I want them to be on the, to develop as a player. But I also think it's wrong for my 8-year-old to be playing year-round baseball. I just want you to know we're not going to be playing fall ball. And how do they react to that? And like they may not be okay with that. Um, and then if you can find one that doesn't require it, I mean, that's the challenge. That's one of the biggest challenges in sports. That can you not find a team or a league that doesn't require this? And I think coaches, I think most coaches know that it is not in kids' best interest. Uh, I mean, they may want them for their own sake because it builds, you have this good player, you want to keep them and you want them to get better and better so that they're the best 10-year-old. But it is not in the child's best interest to be the best 10-year-old in baseball year
Yeah.
round. It's better to play different sports, shake it up, have different coaches, not be great at everything. I think that's a real hidden advantage. Playing multi sports, it's not just so that you develop your skills, it's that you see what it feels like to not be the best player. And
Mhm.
you get a kind of better perspective on what it's like when you're on that team that you do so well on. Like, you just develop a little more empathy, I think.
Yeah.
But I also say about specialization, the way our system is now, I don't see how you can avoid it by the time they get to 10th grade. And depending on the sport, like that's not true of all sports. Running, for example, you don't have to. You really don't have to. It is just pure, it's numbers based. And you probably don't have to specialize until junior year. And when I say specialize, run 3 seasons.
Mhm.
Um, but at a certain point in soccer, say, the way the system works and the way they have these, what do they call them? Where you go and all the college coaches
Showcases.
showcase tournaments. Yes, um, you're not going to be seen. And I don't know what to do about that except put it off as long as possible. Just delay as long as possible until your child gets as old as it grows into their body as much as possible.
Yeah, and I don't know how much inherent research you have in your brain right now on this, Linda, but from the couple of college coaches that I've talked to, in different sports, I mean, they all value the multi-sport athlete, almost all of them, to
Yes,
a certain point, and, they would like these clubs and travel organizations would never tell you that.
yes. Well, and what's interesting is, first of all, there's a lot of research on this. And there was just a big article in the New York Times about it the other day about early sports specialization. And the gist of the article was, and the lead person they interviewed was Niro Jayanthi, who runs the head of sports medicine research at Emory. And he's kind of like the big kahuna when it comes to the subject. He's like,
Mhm.
first of all, every child is different. So, yes, some children, like Tiger Woods and David Beckham, they can play from the time they're little wee children and then just take over the world. Vast majority of top athletes, that's not the case. And most, even the pro athletes that, are top of the world now, Sinner, Federer in tennis, there's a lot of soccer players on the German team that won the World Cup a few years ago. They all played multi sports. They didn't specialize until the German team until they were 21. There's a lot of evidence that it is better to, as Nero would say, to build the athlete, expose them to a lot of activity. If they want to play multi sports, great. Um, and, to avoid that early specialization as long as possible. Um, and one study I wanted to point out that I read a while back about in Amherst did an internal study of their sports teams, sports versus not students who weren't athletes and those who were, and like how it panned out. And one disturbing finding they had is that the athletic teams were growing in part because the coaches were recruiting more people because many kids were getting hurt. So they needed a deeper bench because, and that's a function of the early specialization. So the kids come to college, they're top of the heap when they get there, but it all falls apart because they've been playing too long, they've been playing too much, and they get hurt. And so I just thought that was an interesting study.
Yeah, that is interesting. It also gets to the point of, some college coaches, I think, will look at a player and like, what can I do with them? Like, what natural abilities do they have, as opposed to like this refined skill, which again usually comes from the repetition, which then leads to the injuries.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, another thing that you talked about in the book was this notion that you have to start sports young or you fall behind.
Yeah.
So calm the parents
Calm the
with that
masses.
with that fear.
Okay. There I It's true in certain sports that they really do need to start young, like gymnastics.
Okay.
Okay. So if you intend to have the next Simone Biles in your family, and by the way, you're not going to, and you can't make it happen as the parent. This is where I have a problem with this research because you're deciding for the kid they're going to be a gymnast.
Yeah.
Um, so leave that out. I mean, there are a couple of sports where you really do need to start early that are very, very highly skilled. Golf, I think, is another one.
Mhm.
Um, for the vast majority of kids, they're better off having free play. Oh, imagine that, not being in an organized setting. Free play, you know, outside with peers, without obviously without any technology. You know, there's so much research about the benefits of free play. And not only for athletics or athletic growth, I say it's less about athletic growth than it is about personal growth and about developing life skills, figuring out how to negotiate with peers, resolving conflicts. You know, say they're playing wiffle ball out at the playground or capture the flag. There's all kinds of skills that kids learn from free play that we have, eroded with this fascination with organized sports. Because in organized sports, kids are told what to do. They're instructed, they are directed, and they don't have to think for themselves, really. Even in the game, they're instructed on what to do. So the first is to give kids opportunities for free play, give them choice. It's so important that kids direct where they're playing and what they're doing. I mean, if you come from a household of lacrosse players or soccer players, I mean, obviously you're going to expose them to that. But there are other sports they might prefer, and that's fine too. Again, and I spoke to Neuro Jayanthi again. He's the Emory doctor, researcher. He's like, just have stuff around that they can use. You want to build, if you're really want them desperately to be athletes, give them exposure to a lot of things. Build the athlete, not build their soccer playing skills. Like just their entire athletic profile. It's by having stuff around they can use, encouraging it, making it fun. I mean, the whole idea, the concept of fun, kids aren't playing because it's not fun. It's not surprising.
Yeah.
So, I think if we could get parents to back off, adults in general to back off, let kids take their time and develop and, like expose them to, they can start whatever, some like um rec basketball or rec soccer when they're young, but there should not be a rush or a race to get them into something that, it's not going to like give you a head start. I guess that's kind of like, I think people think it's going to give me a head start.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, if they start playing at 5 years old and they're specializing, and by 10, they are going to have an advantage. And then what? Once you go through puberty, people think kids catch up.
Yeah.
It's just, there's more to life than just sports. That's the other thing. And
Right.
controlling them so much. There's so much control involved. Kids need a little more freedom. They need to explore. They need opportunities to make mistakes on their own. And, as you follow anything of Jonathan Haidt's research or Spinazzi, free range kids, they need opportunities to experience things by themselves.
Yeah.
Which is so terrifying. Oh my gosh, walk around the corner by yourself. And, we have these ideas of what's dangerous and everything feels perilous at times. But actually, they do need to learn these things, and it's better to give them those chances as they're growing up.
Yeah. And I would be remiss right now if I didn't mention that I wrote on this very thing last week about free play and just really advocating. I mean, I don't think it's realistic as much for at a certain age that kids are just going to have the time to go out and play as much as they should. Hopefully they do a little bit, but really advocating for the pre-existing clubs and organizations. If you have 3 practices a week, make one of them kid led. And not only does it benefit them for all the reasons you said, Linda, but it actually benefits the coach to observe it from afar and will help plan and learn how to coach that. That's just my little.
Well, that reminds me of the study that David Epstein talked about. He's the author of Range.
Yeah.
He shared this study and something I read somewhere of they were Brazilian basketball players, and there were 2 sets of 11-year-old kids,
Okay.
11, and there were 2 groups of them, about 10 in each side. One group had 18 sessions of games with coaches and referees. The other group had 18 sessions without a coach. It was just totally child led. And the group that was the kids were responsible and figuring it out on their own, they showed more creativity, tactical creativity and intelligence on the court. You're right. I mean, coaches can do this in their practices. They can back off and there's evidence to show that that's going to help their kids become better athletes too.
Totally.
Um, and the other thing I would point out is, and maybe you wrote about this last week, this idea of play clubs. So if your child's in elementary school, there's a movement afoot, again by Lenore Skenazy of Free Range Kids, to introduce play clubs after school. So if they get out, school is dismissed at 3. Well, from 4 to 5, they could have a play club where there's an adult there acting as a lifeguard. Kids
Yep.
of different ages just mess around in the field. So there's somebody there, but they're not like orchestrating play. They're just getting out of the way. And I think that's the kind of thing I would have loved when my kids were little. Just let them kind of be instead
Yeah.
of telling them what to do.
Yep. Yep. I love it. Okay. This is the final thing. I'll let you go here. And again, I'm gonna turn this into a written piece as well. So
Okay.
the larger audience can glean some of the stuff here. But you talked about they're showing some creativity at home. They're getting in the free play. Then the next step is let them join a low key rec league. Okay, so they're good in the rec league because they've done all this free play and they have confidence and creativity. They're like, an 8-year-old great little basketball player dominating in rec. And then, their teammate with the older kid is like, hey, join my AAU or come join this travel baseball club. And how do you push that off as long as possible?
Well, I think that's very hard. And I think that's one of the toughest challenges, especially if your child really wants to do it. I think it's really important as the parent to consider the ramifications, because once you're on that train, it's unlikely you're going to get off. So if you
Right.
have an 8-year-old, that means 10 years of this. Do you have other kids? Oh, unless they quit, which of course they might, because they'll
Yes.
start to hate it. Um, and if you have other children, what is the effect on the other children? Um, if you happen to be a married couple and you have more than 2 kids, how's that going to work? So I think with all of this stuff, the idea is to delay as long as possible. Like put the serious stuff off for as long as possible. It'll be there when your child's 12 or 13 in middle school or high school. Um, and they will be behind somewhat, but they'll also be stronger in different ways and will grow if they have the capacity. Um, I think there's a cost, and some of those kids will. The 8-year-old who starts playing baseball full time, they're going to make the high school team, and you may think, "Boy, I wish I'd done that." And it's very possible that kid will get hurt.
Yeah.
Very likely get hurt, quit, give up on it, and whereas your child will be like excited about it because they haven't been playing it all the time.
Right.
Um,
Not to mention the literal cost of it all.
yes, I mean that alone is so prohibitive. I don't know if you saw the Aspen Institute study that found that parents, sports parents spend. I just find this hard to believe. 202 minutes
Yes.
every day of a child's game and practice, which is
Yeah.
basically every day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I mean that's just crazy. I Then
And
it's
in
not about.
outward, it was just like logistics, I think, like
Yeah,
just planning.
yeah. And I guess I would argue that that's not kids sports anymore. That's not kids sports. And if you're in that position where you're thinking, well, I know he really wants to do AAU, and I don't know, I hate to disappoint him. Well, let's think about what that's going to mean for you. And I don't think there should be any shame in saying, I don't want that kind of life. I don't want our family to be like that. I want us to have time to be together on the weekends as a family. Uh, that like there's no should be no shame in that, or like, oh, I'm letting my child down. No, you're like considering your whole family and your own well-being. The other thing we're realizing, and Vivek Murthy pointed this out, former Surgeon General, that parents are so stressed out,
Mhm.
anxious about their kids' schedules, their kids' mental health, how they're ever going to make it in this world. It's like, well, maybe parents deserve a break too. You don't have to do all this crap. And it's not going to make that much difference anyway. I mean, unless your kid is really great and really loves it and plays all the time, and is just so motivated and is going to be good, that child's going to get noticed and will be fine. And most of them, their career ends after high school anyway. So what are we doing this for? You know?
Right. Amen. Thank you. Gosh, so much to think about. So yeah, man, appreciate it so much, Linda. And
My pleasure, Melissa.
everybody,
Nice
I feel
talking
like
to you.
everybody in the youth sports universe knows your book already,
Oh,
but
that's nice. That's very
I'll throw
nice.
it up there again. And
Well,
I hope to meet you in person someday.
wait,
And
where are you? Tell me where
I
you are.
I am in Oakland, California, which is why
Oh,
I was getting the time
the
zones.
time. Yeah, I always mess that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
hope so too, Melissa, and keep up your great work too with your Substack.
thank you so much. Great chatting with you.
You too. I'll see you
Okay.
later.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.